Hello everyone, Supersonic Horror here. So I actually have decided to have a Star Wars marathon and I'm going to review all of the Star Wars movies in the series. Now before I actually get into the review itself and I give you my overall opinion on each movie, I think it's important for me to give you my retrospect of the movie because I have a very different history with the movies and I feel like it's real important for me to share my opinion with you guys so you know what opinion and the angle I'm coming from when I give you my opinion on each of these movies. Because I will be completely honest, I've never really considered myself a Star Wars fan. I know, it's a bit crazy for me to say that I'm not really a fan of one of the most revolutionary movies of all time, especially considering I'm a movie enthusiast, but I think there's a certain reason for it. Now, at one point in my life, I have no idea how old I was, but at one point I saw A New Hope, and I thought it was, okay, pretty good, I guess. But at one point, I completely forgot about it, and I only remembered one or two scenes and the overall Princess Leia getting kidnapped subplot. That is really all I remembered from it until I came back to watch it again for the sake of this review. And I only saw it once. But there was another Star Wars movie I always grew up with. And that was, unfortunately, The Phantom Menace. And you guys all probably know how The Phantom Menace turned out. Now the problem is, since Phantom Menace advertises itself as Episode 1, I was too young to be able to realise that Episode 1 was actually the fourth Star Wars movie in the series. And the Episode 1, 2, and 3 was actually a prequel trilogy, and the originals was 4, 5, and 6. I didn't know that for the longest time. So I always thought Episode 1 of Phantom Menace was the first one. And I could not sit through the entire movie for reasons I'll explain in my review for The Phantom Menace. But I tried so many times and I could not sit all the way through the movie. And the problem was, I always thought that I had to sit through the entire movie before I could go and watch the other ones. So I was always stuck on one, so I could never actually get any further than The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace is the only Star Wars movie I grew up with, which I think is incredibly sad. But now that Force Awakens is coming out into cinemas in just a couple of weeks, I thought to myself, this might actually be a good time for me to actually give all of the films another chance, and now that I know more about the series and I know about the sequels are actually prequels and all this stuff, I think it's now time for me to give the movies another chance, and maybe I might become a fan myself. After all, just a couple of months ago, I became a fan of the Mission Impossible films extremely quickly. Maybe these movies might have the same effect on me. So, did the Star Wars series change my mind? I don't exactly know, I only seen A New Hope, but let's find out. This is the Star Wars Marathon. As a start to this marathon, I'll be looking at Star Wars, A New Hope, or Star Wars Episode 4, or whatever you guys like to call it. So story-wise, how is Star Wars? I'd say that the original Star Wars, I think, is a pretty solid film if you ask me. I honestly do think it tells a really nice 3-act story. The overall story is that the Empire has taken over the overall galaxy, I believe. A kid named Luke Skywalker is taken in by a guy named Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he is going to be taught about this thing known as the Force. And there is a prophecy saying that Luke will bring balance to the Force. So Luke needs to go on this big epic space adventure and learn about the Force, and is given some really iconic weapons. After having a rendezvous with a guy named Han Solo, they eventually make it onto a ship known as the Millennium Falcon. And they go taking off and they end up at this place known as the Death Star. A space station that is capable of blowing up an entire planet. With all of these guys on the Death Star, they now decide that they need to try and go around and see if they can blow this Death Star up and try and put an end to this whole tyranny. I think the story as a whole is really fun, and I definitely had a fun time watching this movie, but I will point out that I think the first act or so of the story is a little bit slow paced. The opening scene with the Empire ship and everything, that's all fine, but once we start to get focused on R2 and C-3PO, I'm thinking to myself, okay movie, this is interesting and all, but come on, you can pick up the pace a little bit. Once we meet Luke Skywalker, the movie does eventually pick up pace and the story becomes a lot of fun. But fortunately, while the movie is a bit slow paced, fortunately it doesn't become borderline boring. It's just a little bit slow. But one thing I appreciate is that while slow paced, it actually spends its slow pacing in a rather clever way because we start to get to know C-3PO and R2-D2. Now yes, I know these are not the main characters of the movie, the main character is Luke Skywalker, but the thing is, since so much is happening later on in the film, we're going to spend all this time knowing Luke Skywalker and all these other characters. And so we're actually just going to get to know C-3PO and R2 very early on, so that way we already know these characters, so later on we can just focus on our main characters. I think it's pretty clever, and it makes up for the fact that the beginning of the movie does move a little bit slowly. So, in a nutshell, the beginning of the story is a little bit slow, but good character development more than makes up for it. It's a clever character development that prevents me from getting bored and wanting to turn the movie off or at the very least fast forward. I just wish the movie picked up the pace a little bit. Luke Skywalker, in my opinion, is an excellent main protagonist. Luke, in my opinion, seems really authentic to me. He feels like a real person. Why? Well, he's likable and in some ways relatable, but at the same time, he is not perfect. When we are first introduced to him, he actually rather complains a little bit and he just wants more. He feels like he's in a really boring life and he just wants to go out and do more stuff. He wants to go out on adventures, he wants to have fun, he thinks his life is just a little bit boring. He's being ungrateful and he doesn't appreciate what he has. This, in my opinion, makes a great authentic protagonist. He feels like a real person to me. There's another character I think is really well done, and it's a character named Princess Leia. Now, the problem movies, and not just action movies, but movies in general seem to get wrong these days, is that sometimes they either make the mistake of making a character, a female character, too vulnerable or too strong, both of which are just as bad as each other. You don't want to have them so strong that they are pretty much unrealistic, but making them vulnerable, it's just giving female the wrong impression. A good, strong female character is someone who can stand up for herself, but at the same time isn't invincible, but is a relatable human being. And this, in my opinion, is what Princess Leia is. Because yes, she gets kidnapped at the beginning of the movie, but once she gets rescued, she proves herself. She actually gets out and uses a gun. She actually gives plans and starts bossing the main characters around. She actually does stuff. And this makes a great, strong female character. And it's almost a shame that she doesn't play a bigger role in the film. So I think Princess Leia is a really well-balanced character, and I definitely appreciate her just for that reason. And of course, there's the antagonist. Darth Vader. Darth Vader is an awesome villain, and I don't think I have to say that because we all know it. He's awesome. He is evil, and he is just, well, awesome, in my opinion. He's such a classic and iconic villain. You could talk to someone who has not seen this movie or any of the other movies. You can talk to someone who knows almost nothing about the Star Wars movies, and yet they would recognize who Darth Vader is. That's because he's such an iconic villain. Personally, I actually don't know where villains would be at today in movies if it wasn't for Darth Vader. He is just so iconic. He's big, he's threatening, he's evil, he's intimidating, and he's just awesome. The cinematography is also excellent in my opinion. Most of the effects that came out in this movie I still think hold up today. And this movie came out in 1977. Now, I will point out that I am aware that there are multiple versions of this movie. There's the original theatrical edition of the film, and then there are all these special editions of the films. And I do not have the original, unfortunately. I have the special edition, but it doesn't really matter because most of the effects I saw, I was really impressed with. Like, for an example, that little thing that Luke Skywalker rides around. When I watch this movie, I look at that and I think to myself, that looks real. And it's definitely impressive considering modern movies these days actually have really, really bad effects. Seriously, 2015 has worse effects than this movie, and that I think is extremely impressive. And of course, I cannot talk about the Star Wars movies without bringing up John Williams' excellent score. I love John Williams' work. Some of my favourite movie scores of all time is done by John Williams, and of course, this is no exception. I will say that I love it when you pop the disc of the DVD, Blu-ray or VHS tape or whatever it is you're watching a movie on, and then you actually get that blue text saying, "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away," fades to black, and then suddenly there's a spacey, starry background with the logo of the movie on the screen, and then when John Williams' score starts playing, you feel its impact. It feels like it's punching you in the face and it's getting you hyped up for a grand space adventure. The score pumps you up and gets you ready for watching the movie, and it's fantastic. It's a fantastic score, but are you really surprised when it comes to John Williams? John Williams has done some of my favourite scores in movies of all time. I absolutely love songs like this one, the Superman score, the Home Alone score, Jurassic Park, just to name a few. John Williams, you're a very intelligent score composer. As a whole, I think the original Star Wars is a great movie, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. Is this movie good enough for me to consider myself a fan of the Star Wars series? Well, let's see what happens after I see Empire Strikes Back. Now, I'm actually gonna do something I've never done before, and I'm actually gonna start giving ratings in my reviews, and I'll be giving this one my second highest. I'll be giving this movie an A rank. I'm Supersonic Corey, signing off, and I'll see you in my review for Empire Strikes Back. Cheers!